Well, will Donald Trump really be so decisive as to show Putin and all the dictators around one of their fingers and send him away? We'll talk right now. This is a live broadcast of YouTube channel 24. My name is Irina Ozlova, and together with me is Yuri Rashkin, a public and political figure from the United States of America, as well as a member of the District Assembly of Rock County, Wisconsin. Yuri, hello. I am sincerely glad to see you.
Hello, Irina, I am sincerely glad to see you, your viewers, listeners. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. Thank you for taking the time. Today, I will not start with Trump's plans, which are simply multiplying and scaling all the Western media and the entire Western world. There is already so much conspiracy that Trump himself probably has no idea that such plans are being hatched even in his unpredictable head. Today I could not hold back tears on the air when I told how a Belarusian prankster trolled Russian teachers, writing, as if an official letter, that they should make hats from foil and thus they will be able to defend themselves from enemy NATO, take part in such a grandiose, good, kind action for the Russian Federation called Helmet of Fatherland. And they really did it. Even there are hats of such a kind that probably YouTube will not be very censored, so they put on such a tin foil hat and made photo reports of the video. Tell me, please, Yuri, I don't even understand that they are being scammed. Here are the representatives of such a nation, a sub-empire, whose dictator is scaled up and wars are unleashed. They firmly believe that they will be protected by tin foil hats from for some reason suddenly enemy NATO, which attacks them. Will the Trump administration and the people around him be ready to fight back?
We must admit that foil hats are probably a good indicator when you can clearly determine who is for whom, and who watches which channels, where they get information from. We don't have foil hats, we have red hats. And these little Red Riding Hoods voted for Trump on November 5th. Now we will have Donald Trump as president. Democracy has worked. Hooray. And this means that NATO as an organization will now be either not or different, so it is not clear what kind of rebuff Trump will give to Putin. For me, in general, all this is very, very worrying, because instead of talking about what the threat is here, and I hope that this is happening in parallel, I hope that while there is hope that Donald Trump will somehow help in some incredible way, and not worsen the situation, then in parallel we need to prepare for this. And the situation is that I was against the election of Donald Trump not just because I don't like red-orange paint. No, I resisted, because I believe that we should help Ukraine even more than we help. I am afraid, and everyone has reason to suspect, that under Donald Trump there will be less help, that is, zero. And the fact that we are already hearing his proposal to let the Europeans in there, let them sit while Russia shoots at them at this time, so that's it, and assistance to Ukraine ends. Europeans should also be imprisoned. When they were shooting there in the Donbass for so many years, now they want to put Europeans there. I think the Europeans will most likely disagree. They don't even agree, it would be against what they wanted. Please, so through the Europeans, using others, Trump will solve his problems. This, as I can tell you, is nothing good here. So to say that Trump can give some kind of rebuff to Putin, when Putin's TV of this sub-empire shows photos of naked Melania Trump, then this is not a TV that is afraid that Trump will come and show it to everyone. This is a TV that believes that they have Trump. And they can troll him, they can make fun of him, but they can't mock Vladimir Putin. The TV watchdog can't say anything bad about him and won't say anything bad about him. So this is the situation that is now unfolding. It seems to me that the most important question for Ukraine is how to preserve statehood. I think that this issue, which we in the United States simply had to carry out our task on November 5th, we did not fulfill. Our country is better than those who came to vote on November 5th. But on November 5, people came to vote, most of whom said that they do not support the policies of the Democrats, that they do not support assistance to Ukraine, that they do not support helping women for women's rights, minority rights, the rights of people from other countries, immigrants. All this we do not need. It was they who said, "This is not America." I believe that the people who came on November 5 support these values, and the majority of people in America support humanitarian, I don't know, for good, because what we see now is the opposite of this. We are now going to see a coalition between China and Russia. The only interesting question is how they will resolve the issue with Israel and Iran, given that Israel is with Trump and Iran with Putin. It seems that now is such a moment. It is sad, but it will be indicative to observe what other countries will do. Perhaps it will not be sad, perhaps it will be very interesting. For example, South Korea. What will they do, given that they still have North Korea on the border? This threat is still going away and may even be growing, and they will have to fight for it themselves. Because who will save them? Donald Trump. There can be no more certainty in this.
But although Trump has already spoken with the president of South Korea, Yuri, and with the president of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky as well, no one has spoken with Putin. Maybe they will find joint ways to counter dictators. And forgive me for interrupting a little, but just about what Trump uses for his own interests and about interaction with such countries. The Hill writes that Trump needs Ukraine to break the alliance of the Russian Federation, China, Iran and North Korea. Or maybe such a scenario can really be.
Anything can happen, but the way the situation looks now, it looks very, very alarming. And democracy now, it cannot be said that it has completely lost the Third World War. But we have a chance that we can repel the offensive back. That has now occurred in the United States. It's not that it's questionable. But this is not yet a settled issue. Because the majority of people came and voted, so there is not even a guarantee that more people will come and vote in the next elections. Therefore, this is now a very open question in the United States. Therefore, what guarantees can we give to someone else in such a situation? I'm not sure. Again, Donald Trump has been selling out as an agent of chaos, so relying on him is like relying on a tornado. Even Putin can't rely on him, because he behaves all the time in such a way that he merges his connection with the Kremlin, so Putin is now trying to stay away from him. They are now, admittedly, waiting for January 20th, because when Trump officially becomes president, he will not need to do any more appearance. That he has some good words or thoughts for those who disagree with him, in principle, and we will now watch and everyone will watch what will happen to people in the country, I mean celebrities, first of all, because we will watch where the Trump administration will hit these enemies inside the country. But that South Korea must rely only on itself or perhaps on other allies in the region is becoming increasingly clear. The fact that Taiwan, let's not forget about Taiwan, which is now sitting waiting, I think they need to prepare, and they are very ready, and they are preparing, but it is not clear what kind of support they will have and with whom. You know, in such a chaotic situation, it is not clear with whom the United States will and can enter into a military conflict, because on the one hand, Trump fought with China with these tariffs and so on, and on the other hand, one dictator and the other dictator. See, if dictators can quarrel, and this can also happen when people have power, then this can lead to subsequent consequences. But the situation is not what we can hope for. There is a situation for which you need to prepare. And very unpredictable things can happen in either direction.
Yuri, French Minister of Affairs Jean-Noël Barrot expressed hope that the newly elected U.S. President Donald Trump will continue to support Ukraine in the context of the war with the Russian Federation, Le Parisien reports. According to Barrot, the President of the new United States is too wise to agree to what will be the largest territorial annexation in 75 years. And indeed, if you look at it from this angle, why should Trump follow Putin's lead when the negotiation track will begin, when, as Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk says, the dates of the end of the war, the borderlines and the security guarantees that we will see are probably already being processed and discussed? Why should Trump be number two and prostrate under Putin, as Mikhailo Podolyak, also an advisor to the head of the office of the President of Ukraine, says? He, as a businessman, knowing his nature, will never allow himself to do this.
You know, I'm glad to hear optimism, but, first of all, Donald Trump is not such a good businessman and, it seems, his main client was Putin. Therefore, to say that he is such a successful businessman when he resold his real estate for crazy markups to Russian oligarchs, thus helping them to send money to the West. This is not the kind of person who will simply argue with Putin. And time will tell very quickly, but we already had 4 years when we saw Putin and Trump in Helsinki. It's just that with regard to France, I have now seen Macron having 23% of support, and we see that the right-wing movements will now continue to walk around the planet, because the situation in Germany looks either ambiguous or unequivocally bad for democracy. As far as I understand, and we have every reason to suspect, that with Donald Trump coming to power in the United States and Putin already in Russia, then Europe will just be in a vice in a sense, and we know that democracies can be influenced in elections. Therefore, now there will be pressure for other people in France, other people in Germany to come to power, and then the statements that will be made by their ministries will be completely different.
And why should this pressure come in principle? We see that Trump gathers presidents and leaders of other countries at his Mar-a-Lago residence, and Polish President Andrzej Duda, for example, goes there, who also says that there can be no agreements, let alone about Ukraine without Ukraine, but about Ukraine without its closest neighbors, associates and allies. Yes, of course, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban will also go there, who is happy, but nevertheless, Putin is not going there either. He is not invited. There was no such information. The fact that Trump gathers representatives of different countries, where there are both right and left, and more democratic Europe, and less liberal regimes, does this mean? And what issues can also be discussed there? Or is it more symbolic?
No, I think that there is nothing symbolic here. I think that Trump will dictate his terms. And since he is now working with people who have clear plans, including Elon Musk, who communicates with Vladimir Putin, he will give them clear, specific statements. I wonder how inhumane they will be, because this is kind of a key part of his strategy. This is what he sold to voters in the United States. This is what he will now carry out, this inhumane agenda, anti-human. And I think that we are now in a world where territorial integrity is not as important as sovereignty in principle. Because now for the countries that are in Europe, because their God is there they are, and now they don't have the protection of the United States, which I don't feel that Europe has anymore, it leaves them practically alone. Either with Russia, or with the United States, or with China. In general, each country, depending on where they are on this planet, will now have to deal with their main strong. In such a situation, the preservation of statehood, perhaps a la Lukashenko and Belarus, will be the goal, at least, that Putin and his allies will try to achieve, so that on the one hand the country seems to exist, and on the other hand, the country seems to not. And it turns out that in a situation where a country can either be in such a situation or can be part of the Russian Empire, then not being part of the Russian Empire is the next stage, a step into hell, which must be contained and not become part of the Russian Empire. And the rest of the details will now be worked out territorially. And it's a shame because President Biden has done so much. And the result of this is this. And at the same time, I also expect that as a result of what is happening, Biden will not hear thanks. In the sense that for some reason to agree under Biden, when there was help, then it was impossible. And under Trump, when there is an opportunity to take aid, then suddenly the views change. This sometimes happens when there are funds, and when there are no funds. And this, by the way, also speaks to our moral principles, because people have a greater understanding of morality when they have the means. When they don't have the means, morale very often sometimes still falls with it. Therefore, I am interested in expecting Trump to do anything other than help Putin in various ways. If Trump invites Russia to join NATO, it would be an interesting trick, because if you can't leave NATO, then it is explained that all those in NATO are now allies of Russia.
Or maybe Trump will invite NATO to Ukraine, because we are grateful for all the help that we have seen from the United States of America in 3 years of almost full-scale war, for more than 990 days of full-scale war unleashed by Putin. But it is still a controlled escalation, sometimes a lack of solutions, a lack of armed aid. When there was a successful Kherson and Kharkiv offensive and critics of the Biden administration throw at them as such a subtle, light, not always understandable, but reproach and expect the most decisive steps, if not from the current administration and from Trump. Maybe it is not Russia that will be invited by NATO, but to Ukraine, because Biden has invited it to NATO, although there was an opportunity to do it at 2 summits in Vilnius and Washington. We did not see it either the year before last, or last year, or this year. Or maybe this window of opportunity for the Biden administration will open some kind of coffin for Putin?
A coffin for Putin, it's nice. You know, what I see is that in the United States now, at the moment, in the middle of, say, the first half of November, there is little hope. The feeling is that Trump will do what Trump wants and that people have supported him in this. Because Trump came to the elections with a very extremist position and agenda. Everyone was told about his 2025 project. Everyone had to understand that it meant everything, including, I don't know, even banning pornography, just a complete blow to everyone. And after that, he won and became president. Accordingly, he is now expected to implement this agenda. This means that, for example, now there will be no confrontation as it was in 2016. This, it seems to me, is now the saddest understanding that when Trump came to power in 2016, we had 8 years of Obama. Even Bush Jr., he was an institutionalist, because he was for institutions. And now, it means that the chaotic Trump will come on the one hand, and on the other hand, he will be followed by people who are already preparing, have been preparing and will know better what to do with this situation, with the power that they will get their hands on. The hope that, for example, something will go wrong very quickly because they will control all branches of government. The Supreme Court, Congress, it seems, the Senate and the White House. And, in theory, in an electoral democracy, in which we seem to live, if one party that comes to power, and it has all the levers, it will mess things up, as it usually happens when there is no good opposition. And it turns out what happens. And after that, something will happen. But it is difficult to understand what state the country will be in by this time, because, for example, there is already an attack on trade unions, because the trade unions did not actively support Donald Trump enough. And yes, I'm sure there are people who will say hooray. Trade unions. This is a criminal organization that will now get what they deserve. But, on the other hand, the dismantling, getting rid of the trade unions was an important part of how the Third Reich began. Therefore, imagine what we have, and in general the agenda of this project 2025. They will just walk, as if they don't even invent it, it's already invented. The question is how much they can do it and how much they can do it. Because, for example, catching 1 million illegal migrants in Florida will not be easy. But if people allow this to start happening, then, as Timothy Snyder said, it shows that fascism has come to the country. If they catch immigrants on the streets, people will let it happen. It'll be like this on our streets. This does not mean anything good for the country. And in such a situation, if there is an economic collapse, then you do not want to lose the elections and give up power. It is much more attractive to think about war. Therefore, on the one hand, Donald Trump was such a president, he sold himself as a peacemaker president, and on the other hand, there are no guarantees of what will happen in his next coming to power. Therefore, it is chaotic. It can deliver some kind of blow, but it is not chaotic in the direction of Putin. In the direction of Putin, he is incredibly constant.
But there is another opinion, in particular regarding both domestic policy and the policy of migrants. Those voters who voted for Trump, whom we listened to on the air of both American and Ukrainian media and publications represented in America, say that it is the issue of migrants, the issue of failed economic policy, the issue of inflation, everything that worried them so much by the end of the fourth year of Biden's presidency. And the fact that they did not hear how the mechanisms of the decision from the Democratic candidate Kamala Harris prompted many to change their minds and go for Trump. Today we see that, according to the Associated Press, all 7 swing states still gave their preference to Trump in regarding these issues, and this has practically never happened. Even those states that were blue when electing Biden became red this time. And why did this happen? Did Kamala Harris really not have mechanisms for solving domestic politics, internal problems that were ripe in the United States of America? Will the Democrats continue to understand how to change this course and find a closer connection with voters and the content for this?
Look, this is a very important question, because we will have to figure it out, because the Titanic of democracy has hit an iceberg and we need to understand what kind of iceberg it is, what it is. Of course. Why? How could we? How could such a Titanic go to such a bottom? And the fact that we must admit that the Democratic Party, the core, has one agenda, the Republican Party has a different agenda. And it is different, and the Republican Party lives in the agenda that Fox News and others project to it, which means in their money, in which they live. Where does all this information come from? Not that it is normal. This is very bad, but that's part of the problem. And the decisive problem why Kamala Harris still lost, I think, is because she did not count the votes of people who said, "No, woman, these women got me." You know, they just demand something all the time. They always say, "I don't say that, I don't behave like that. They've got me already." Whether I vote or not, it wasn't too many, but these were the votes that Kamala Harris missed. These are people who believed that women were not trusted or something else. In general, invent a stereotype for yourself, but this is the country of America when we talk before the elections. We have Republican women, businesswomen who own businesses, everything is fine, but there are women politicians, but to vote for a woman for president, and especially, moreover, not white, I think that was the reason that led to the fact that Kamala Harris did not count the key, important votes that she needed. And that's such a split, so she didn't solve the domestic agenda for those who didn't think she could solve it, or those who doubted her, or those who received information from elsewhere. Because what Trump is proposing will hit his voters first. Because, for example, people from the post-Soviet space who voted for Trump in the hope that he would help Ukraine will soon be very disappointed. People who thought that they helped Trump, because somehow the situation, it will hit them. How many people who live here from the post-Soviet space, who do not have all those documents and for whom it can cost deportation, which can cost big problems. But nevertheless, the Russian-speaking population in the United States almost unanimously voted for Trump, for some reason, not considering themselves immigrants. Okay. And we see such a split in society when people vote. Because now Trump said that this is all for the people. He has a party of workers and peasants. And after the elections, with whom does he converse? He meets with all the billionaires and celebrates. That is, this disconnect says that it is necessary to hit some basic distrust of people that a person is a woman or something else, because as a result you can have such a result. And I'm not looking for excuses, I'm always looking for understanding. I always want to understand what motivates people and how they can make this type of decision, but, on the other hand, life will show the result. And elections have consequences. And Trump's choice will have very serious consequences for Ukraine. And I wonder what people who supported Trump so much, believing that he would help Ukraine, will think about this. Because I did not oppose Trump simply because I am against red paint. He is against Ukraine. And that's what makes me incredibly worried, and why I'm worried about the situation. But it's just part of his agenda, Ukraine, what we need to see all over the radius. And the country now feels, I will tell you frankly, demoralized. Therefore, we will look at how the country will restore its mentality, and how long it will take, and what losses we will receive in this case, because we are hurt. We have now felt that we have betrayed Ukraine. And this is very difficult. It's also hard to think that we've betrayed women's rights, that we've betrayed the rights of people who need protection. But this is part of how such an authoritarian agenda works. When they say, and instead of saying we are strong, we should protect the weak, they are trying to show how strong they are by attacking the weak. And if the Democrats are only engaged in what they will defend and defend and defend, then everyone will simply be driven into their ghettos. And therefore we need to go and we need confrontation. The Democrats have a lot of leaders, there are congressmen, there are governors who now, they will have an incredible opportunity to show their leadership potential, because they are needed, and those who can show their leadership potential, now, I think, will be very much in demand in American politics.
Yuri, frankly speaking, at the beginning, our society was also a little divided in its reactions and understandings of whether it was good or bad that Donald Trump still won, but there was no demoralization, no negative sentiments. On the contrary, the military political command also says that they see, perhaps, some risks, but also opportunities, that it is necessary to cooperate and not to be fooled by all those plans, fake news that we see incomprehensible, rummaging through all the media, that we need to wait for Trump's official position. Not only that, for example, the head and chairman of NATO's military committee, Dutch Admiral Rob Bauer, on the sidelines of the European Defence Summit, which was in Prague, as reported by the New York Times, says that if Trump allows a country like Russia to win and emerge victorious, then what will it mean for other autocratic states in the world? Where the United States also has its own interests, and that there is more at stake than just Ukraine, and also advises to wait and see what steps Trump will take in power. It is not advised to jump to conclusions, but really, why would I ask him again to surrender to Russia, to give other autocratic states that are not Trump's friends, no matter how you look at it, carte blanche and the opportunity to unleash and scale wars? And what good will this bring to Trump personally, if we are not already talking about the interests of America as a whole?
Money, power, monopoly, fame, whatever you want, everything. He gets from the fact that he has now surrounded both politically influential people and financially influential people. Trump will get some kind of profit from everything. Right now, the future of America could be like what was described in Back to the Future Part 2, where, I don't know, we could have casinos on every corner for a while, which will have Trump written on it, because this person will sell, so we're going to go into that state, apparently, the longer he stays in power. Because he will look for the opportunity to make a profit on everything, on every action, on every penny that is earned. What does this lead to? To monopoly. It's the same thing that Musk wants, it's the same thing that Putin wants. All three of them want a monopoly of political, economic and thought, so that people think right. And then everything will be convenient for them. Their plans coincide. When we take three circles in the diagram, the circle of Putin, Trump, and Musk is very similar. Let's hope that they will not completely quarrel before this planet is over. But, on the other hand, if this planet ends under a dark empire, then I think we will all be swept away quickly enough by the climate crisis.
After all, the reaction of the same Putin, who is probably waiting for Trump to call him, but Trump does not call, and these promiscuities at Valdai, and in fact chaos in the reaction of propaganda, which did not know whether to show a naked Melania, or addressed Trump, or Musk, or all together, then, or in some order in postures and not only, and what can we say in general, does this testify to us what?
About the fact that Putin is bantering about Trump, about the fact that Putin is in control of the situation here. Putin says who he is in charge. The Americans are being informed about this. You are talking, looking, so that you understand, our president is under the president of Russia. What do you think about this, dear Americans? See, at least that's obvious. I'm expecting Lavrov in the Oval Office, but I have to admit that these guys are playing much more carefully than they did in 2016, when they were uncorking the champagne. Simonian is there, and so on and so forth. Now they're doing it a lot more carefully because they have to make it until January 20th when Trump comes to power. Then the curtain breaks and we're going to get the full effect of what they would like. It's going to be, I think, in a sense, shock and awe. That's how the Iraq offensive was in the 2003-2004 war. I don't remember exactly when there was the first attack that was supposed to blow everything to smithereens, and after that. And I think that's going to be the plan that Trump will stick to as much as he can. Even Musk said at the beginning that the economy would collapse at the beginning when they kind of rebuilt this new world. Therefore, this type of perturbation awaits us. And it is very difficult to imagine that in this situation we will be able to help someone. So I think that now Taiwan is very, I can't even say at what level of anxiety. They are watching the situation that is happening, but Taiwan understands that they can rely on themselves and maybe on some regional allies, and I don't know what they can do in such a situation. When they are facing a much bigger aggressor that's on the doorstep, and that's going to be a situation for every country. Yes, the United States has its own interests, and they are probably not for everyone to fight here. Or maybe they are in favor of everyone fighting. The main thing is that all deals are made with Trump, so that everything that is through either Trump, or Musk, or Putin. And then, they will build themselves the world they like.
Yes, it is possible, of course. We cannot predict anything for sure now, but such scenarios are not very rosy for the world and the states. But still, much will depend on Trump's entourage. They hoped that, perhaps, Mike Pompeo would appear there, whose plan was quite pleasing, which was published in the summer in the Wall Street Journal. We hoped that perhaps he would be there. Today we will find out that it is not. Nikki Haley is unlikely to be either. She thanked me, wished me good luck, but, nevertheless, what can we understand now about the principles of Trump's formation of a team around him and to what extent the work of the people represented there will really affect both the internal and external vectors of politics?
This is an interesting question, in the sense that they will want to recruit the most radical people, but the more radical people they recruit, the faster they will quarrel. Will they be able to recruit enough technocrats to meet their demands, and where will it take them? Perhaps anything can happen, but it's just madness to expect good here. The question is how much they will succeed. Perhaps they will not succeed, and it will stall. But at the moment, I can't even outweigh the importance of Ukraine in this situation. Because Ukraine is so important, and now Ukraine that shows the way and light to other countries, because there is still a democracy in Ukraine that opposes Russia. These are interesting situations. Suddenly Ukraine is even more ahead of the whole planet, confronting the anti-civilizational evil. How this can be done, how long it will last, how, no one knows for sure, not even Putin. Therefore, I believe that the issue of territorial integrity is once again not as important as the issue of the principle of state sovereignty, which it seems to me that now stands number one for the countries of Europe, starting with Ukraine, because the country should exist in principle, because if the country exists, then Maidans are possible, an uprising is possible, anything is possible. And this, it seems to me, is now just the key to the policy in which we find ourselves. Because appeal to the fact that there will be some good intentions that can somehow manifest themselves here. We simply do not fully understand the agenda of these people, because we cannot think like them. How can we think like that? That's what you find out when you talk to Republican politicians and leaders. Perhaps they will have to be listened to, because this is power, this is politics. And more, so to speak, to discuss what they say about immigrants and so forth, but we need immigrants in our country. I'm not saying that America is a country of immigrants, but we need labor. If we find ourselves without a workforce, which are immigrants, because they, say, may just want to run away from here, because why be in such a country if you come to work, and you are arrested here and make your life difficult? Okay, I'll go to work in another country. Okay, America is good, but it's dangerous, which means that immigrants will flee from here, they will be deported. And who will work? And here I have two options. Either it will be Elon Musk's digital future, or it will be prisoners, because you can always bring either the intelligentsia to the fields. You know, the problem is that I was born and raised in the Soviet Union, the first 13 years of my life, and so when I see what Donald Trump won, I immediately see far away, you know, the curtain of the Soviet Union, and you begin to think, but this is still something to remember, friends, I live in America. This is not Russia, this is America. We do not have the hundreds of years of negative selection that the Russian under-empire has gone through, and therefore, friends, we just need to deal with what happened here, raise our heads and move forward, because a lot depends on America. We will only see more now. But also a lot depends on Ukrainians. Speaking a little more for a couple of minutes.
Speaking a little more for a couple of minutes about Trump's team, he wants to attract, as it were, the Times tells us, in addition to Musk, a team of billionaires, a technoman, a super genius there. And what can be bad about it? And what is good after all?
It's going to be a good thing in the sense that if you've always wanted to have a digital taxi that comes to you by itself, you've never had to drive a car again because you press a button and a car appears. That's great. Because the Democrats, in a sense, stood in the way of this technological progress, what is called technological singularity, when we merge into one with machines, and the Democrats somehow looked suspicious, although the technology seems to already exist, but sometimes it kills someone. And now under Elon Musk, given that he's going to be kind of our captain of the industry, I think all these bans on digital driving are going to be swept away and we're going to see a lot more just how our society is being transformed. At the same time, why do we need immigrants? Why do we need taxi drivers? Why do we need truck drivers? Why do we need truck drivers? We will now have Elon Musk, who will put a computer in every truck, and that's it. Go for a walk, Vassar. On the other hand, this is, of course, dangerous, because is there the next step, which scientists discussed 20 years ago, that at some point they will simply put a phone in our heads, and we will be, so to speak, photographed in this way, because it will be all inside. On the one hand, it is so convenient, and on the other hand, this makes us all controlled by a resource. And this is very important, because when there is democracy in the country, then we control the situation, we are shareholders. And when there is no democracy in the country, and this can be seen in Russia, then people become a resource. And this is one of the dangers facing the country. But, of course, when we look at people who, from the level of their well-being, look at the planet Earth as from another planet, I think they simply do not care what problems people have to go through here in order to find themselves in the beautiful world that they decided to build for us. Again, we know that the communists, when they tried to build a new world, were doing well. But we again have people who seem to want to build a brave new world from their point of view.
Yuri, we will observe. We have a lot of questions open further, some of which still do not have answers or have their variety. Thank you for your position, work and explanations and for your time until the meeting in a week. Take care of yourself.
Thank you too, Irino, and our wonderful viewers and listeners. Everything will be Ukraine, and Ukraine.
And Ukraine will win, and democracy as well, and good over evil is certain. We believe in this, we work together, Thank you really in our viewers 3000 almost spent this time with us on Sunday, November 10th. Friends, please subscribe to Yuri's YouTube. Rashkin report in the description under this video and subscribe to YouTube 24/2. Even more analytics on our YouTube channels. Take care of yourself. Believe in the armed forces of Ukraine. See you and win.